according to the Wrestling Observer, Tony Khan is about to make some big changes to the look and presentation of AEW Dynamite and Rampage. He even hired WWE's former vice president of global television production, Michael Mansouri. When do you believe that we will see these changes, and what are some of the changes that you think that we're going to see to this television product of AEW?
He wants to make some big changes. I mean, I was watching the show. I was trying to cheat and watch the show at work. But while I was watching it, like, I love AEW and everything that they've been doing, but it could probably use a little bit more, like, color to the show. It looks very, it still looks very indie-ish to me. Some people like that because it looks rugged. You know what I mean? It looks more manly or whatnot. You know, like, they don't like how polished WWE looks and how high the production is because it makes everything look very fake and cinematic and look like what's happening is, you know, it's planned. No one likes to, like, admit that wrestling is scripted. They don't want it to look like it's scripted, and WWE has overly polished the product. But I do see them, like, polishing it up more because, again, like, it for someone that has $1 billion and came up with this layout, when I look at it as a fan, or, you know, I accept it because I'm used to watching wrestling, but sometimes I wonder to myself a lot while I'm watching AEW, if I put this flick on for somebody else who watched WWE back in the day, and then I'm like, oh, hey, like, there's something else called AEW, come watch it. I feel like if they were to watch it, they would assume off of this the appearance of how it looks, it's like, oh, this is like the low release, isn't it? So I feel like they're probably going to up it and make it look not too polished, but something where it actually looks like it's a competitor to WWE. I also probably expect that maybe they might change the stage a little bit, like the way that they come out. I actually always hated that they come out in those two-cylinder things. I know it's like an old school thing, and it probably pops a lot of people, but I think it looks really cheesy. It looks really lame. It looks really ghetto. I don't like none of it. I actually hate the way that they come out. The only time I like looking at AEW entrances is like when it's a pay-per-view, you know. But that's where I feel like their money is going, outside of, like, maybe some production or maybe some matches. I don't know. Like, where else do you think that the money would go to if they're going to up anything?
I think number one, I agree with the tunnels. The reason why I like the tunnels is because the tunnels were our callback to TNA. If you watch Spike TV TNA era, you know that there were two tunnels. There were two actually. The beginning, there were two entrance ramps for TNA Impact. On one side of the Impact Zone, the faces came out. On the other side of the Impact Zone, the heels came out. Then as the product evolved, then it was on one side, the faces came out on this side, heels came out on this side, but they're still like the same Titantron, and they still share the same stage.
So you like it?
I liked it. However, when I see the tunnels in AEW, it definitely is giving cheap.
Yes.
And I think that it's giving cheap not because of the actual concept of the tunnels, but because when you look at a WWE, or even if you look at like an Impact Wrestling, it's usually marked by a single screen or some type of big LED interface that is just very, very bright, a lot of colors, a lot of vibrancy. But because you have the tunnels, and then you have one screen down here,
and the chandelier thing in the middle that Cody used to come through.
Yeah, you have this screen over here and this screen over here. It's like it's a lot of moving parts, and it feels like you can consolidate that set to make it look a little bit more fluid and a little bit more visually appealing.
Yeah, that part.
So I think that the tunnels kind of break that up, but I feel like that's probably where the money's going to go to. I actually really, really like the way that it looks, because I feel like the difference between AEW lighting and WWE lighting is that AEW feels like a boxing match, like or MMA fight. The lighting feels very, very warm and like cinematic, whereas WWE, everything is just bright. It's just bright, vibrant. So I think you need both, but I think that stage is probably going to be one of the biggest kind of like pivoting points for like the change in production value. Now, as far as when we're going to see it, I think we're going to see it on January 11th. That's for the next couple of shows, I'm going to be talking about this.
It's very specific.
Keep your eye on the January 11th episode of Dynamite. It's going to be in LA. It's going to be in front of the Warner execs. A lot of surprises, a lot of things are going to be planned for that show. They're trying to make a good impression because this show is going to determine the trajectory of AEW's television rights negotiations. So I feel like what's going to happen, we're going to see those changes, or we're going to start seeing them around that time along with other things. But the January 11th AEW show is probably going to be one of the most important shows in that company's history. I'll elaborate, in more detail in like upcoming shows. But want to know, how do y'all feel about these upcoming changes? What changes do you think that we're going to see to the AEW television product? But we're moving on to something that is incredibly less serious, well, more serious but less serious, because of the human being known as Lacey Evans.